In 1940, when Nazi Germany's armies overran Denmark and Norway in a matter of weeks, Sweden should have been next. Surrounded on all sides by Hitler's empire, rich in iron ore and strategically positioned for control of the Baltic, it seemed only a matter of time before German tanks crossed its borders. And yet, they never did. Sweden survived World War II untouched by invasion, while every nation around it fell to ruin. But how? Was it luck, geography, diplomacy, or something darker? To understand why Germany never invaded Sweden, we must begin in 1939, at the outbreak of World War II. When Hitler invaded Poland, triggering the conflict, Sweden declared strict neutrality. This wasn't a new policy, it had been Sweden's stance since the early 19th century. But neutrality in 1939 was not a simple declaration of peace. It was a dangerous balancing act between survival and compromise. Prime Minister Per Albin Hansson and King Gustav V knew what was coming. Europe was collapsing into chaos, and neutrality would be tested as never before. Sweden's army was small compared to the great powers, around 100,000 men in peacetime. But mobilization plans were swift. Conscription was reinstated, defensive lines were drawn along the coasts, and air raid shelters were built in major cities like Stockholm and Gothenburg. Yet everyone knew that if Germany chose to invade, there was little hope of stopping them by force. Then came April 1940, the day the map of Scandinavia was rewritten overnight. Germany launched Operation Weserübung, invading both Denmark and Norway. Denmark surrendered within hours. Norway fought bravely for 2 months before being crushed. For Sweden, this was an existential crisis. Suddenly it was surrounded. The Germans in Norway to the west, the Baltic under Nazi control to the south, and Finland, still reeling from its winter war with the Soviet Union, to the east. Sweden was a neutral island in a sea of fire. Every Swedish leader understood the situation clearly. A single wrong move could mean occupation. But what many people don't realize is that Germany didn't spare Sweden out of mercy or forgetfulness. It was a cold, calculated decision, rooted in economic logic, geography, and the delicate diplomacy Sweden maintained throughout the war. First, there was iron, the lifeblood of Hitler's war machine. The German military-industrial complex depended heavily on Swedish iron ore, mined from the northern regions of Kiruna and Gällivare. This ore of exceptionally high quality was essential for manufacturing tanks, guns, and warships. Before the war, Germany had imported roughly half of its iron ore from Sweden. After the fall of Norway, the German control of the Norwegian port of Narvik allowed them to transport Swedish ore safely through the ice-free fjords, even in winter. If Germany invaded Sweden, that supply could be disrupted or destroyed. Why conquer the hand that feeds you? German strategists knew this. The Swedish ore fields were too valuable to risk damaging through occupation. As long as Sweden continued to export iron, Germany had no reason to jeopardize the arrangement. In effect, Sweden's greatest vulnerability, its resources, became its shield. But it wasn't just economic, geography played its part too. Sweden's landscape was vast, heavily forested and filled with lakes, mountains, and narrow roads that would have been a nightmare for German mechanized units. The Wehrmacht thrived on lightning offensives across open plains, not drawn-out mountain campaigns through frozen terrain. An invasion would have been slow, costly, and strategically unnecessary. Germany already held Norway's coastline and Denmark's southern access. Sweden offered no immediate advantage worth the price of conquest. Still, neutrality came at a cost. While maintaining its independence, Sweden made a series of concessions to Germany that blurred the line between neutral and complicit. When Germany demanded the right to transport troops and supplies through Swedish territory to aid the invasion of Norway, the Swedish government quietly agreed. Trains full of German soldiers passed through Swedish railways under the guise of leave transit. Swedish ports allowed German shipping, and German aircraft occasionally used Swedish airspace. It was a dangerous game of appeasement. Enough cooperation to avoid provoking Berlin, but not enough to declare open allegiance. The most infamous example came in June 1941, during the so-called Midsummer Crisis. Hitler had just launched Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union, and demanded that Sweden allow the transit of the German 163rd Infantry Division from Norway to Finland. This would have violated Sweden's neutrality completely. The Swedish cabinet was deeply divided. Some ministers argued that granting this request would make Sweden little more than a puppet state. Others feared that refusal would trigger immediate invasion. After tense debate, Prime Minister Hansson reluctantly agreed. German troops crossed Swedish soil, bound for the Eastern Front. That decision haunted Sweden's reputation for decades. Yet it may have saved the country. Hitler saw Sweden as cooperative. Meanwhile, the Swedish military prepared quietly for the worst. Coastal batteries were strengthened, bunkers dug, and new aircraft purchased. The Skåne Line, a vast system of defensive fortifications in the south, stood as a silent warning to any who might invade. Sweden's message was subtle but clear. We will not provoke you, but if you come, we will fight. Even as it accommodated Germany, Sweden played a double game. Intelligence services in Stockholm became a hub of espionage, with both Axis and Allied spies operating under Sweden's neutral umbrella. British and American intelligence agents used Stockholm as a listening post deep inside Nazi-controlled Europe. Swedish diplomats meanwhile quietly aided Allied efforts, especially through humanitarian missions. Figures like Raoul Wallenberg, the Swedish envoy in Budapest, saved tens of thousands of Jews from the Holocaust by issuing protective passports under Sweden's neutral flag. This was the paradox of Sweden's wartime identity: publicly neutral, privately intertwined with both sides. Swedish trade continued with Germany, but so did secret cooperation with the Allies. As the tide of war shifted, so too did Swedish policy. By 1943, Germany's fortunes were declining. The defeat at Stalingrad and the Allied landings in Italy made it clear that Hitler's empire was beginning to crumble. Sweden sensed the change and gradually distanced itself from Germany. Transit of German troops through Sweden was halted. Trade with the Allies increased. Swedish air bases in the north were quietly made available to Allied aircraft, conducting missions against German positions in Norway. Refugees, Jews, Norwegians, Danes began to pour into Sweden, and the country opened its borders, offering sanctuary to tens of thousands fleeing Nazi persecution. But even in its humanitarian acts, Sweden walked a tightrope. The German ambassador in Stockholm watched carefully for any sign of betrayal. Hitler's paranoia about potential traitors grew as the war turned against him. But by then, Germany lacked the resources to invade. An attack on Sweden in 1943 or 1944 would have meant diverting critical troops from the collapsing Eastern Front. For the Germans, it was too late and too costly. Still, the moral question lingered. How neutral was Sweden, truly? By supplying Germany with iron, ball bearings, and machinery, Sweden indirectly fueled the Nazi war effort. Without Swedish, or many historians argue, Germany's rearmament in the 1930s would have been crippled. Yet by staying neutral, Sweden also became a lifeline for the victims of that same war. It was a neutral country, yes, but one built on uneasy compromises. King Gustav V himself walked a diplomatic tightrope. Though he sympathized with Germany's anti-communism, he was cautious not to align publicly. His government, deeply divided between pragmatists and moralists, constantly debated how far they could go without losing their sovereignty. Each concession was weighed not against ideals, but against survival. Neutrality in wartime Sweden was not peace. It was endurance. By the time Germany finally surrendered in May 1945, Sweden had emerged physically unscathed. Its cities stood intact, its industry untouched, its people alive. But it also emerged with a reputation clouded by questions of complicity. The post-war years brought harsh scrutiny from the Allies, especially Britain and the United States, who accused Sweden of trading with the enemy for profit. Prime Minister Hansen defended the policy as one of necessity, not greed. "We preserved our nation," he said, "so that it could serve the cause of peace when the war was over." And perhaps he was right. Sweden's preserved neutrality allowed it to play a key humanitarian role in the closing months of the war, evacuating concentration camp survivors, sheltering refugees, and mediating post-war negotiations. The country's survival became, in its own way, an instrument for rebuilding Europe. But the scars of moral compromise never fully faded. In retrospect, the reason Germany never invaded Sweden is clear. It was not a single factor, but a convergence of forces. Geography made invasion costly, economics made neutrality profitable, diplomacy made aggression unnecessary. And Germany's own overextension made the idea of conquering Sweden strategically irrational. In the cold arithmetic of war, Sweden was worth more alive than dead. Behind that pragmatic logic, however, lies the uncomfortable truth that survival in a world consumed by tyranny often demands cooperation with it. Sweden's neutrality was not pure. It was practical. And that practicality kept a nation free when so many others fell under the Nazi boot. Sweden's survival in World War II stands as one of the most remarkable examples of political balance in modern history. It neither fought nor surrendered, yet it influenced both sides of the conflict through its choices. The question that lingers is not just how Sweden avoided invasion, but what it cost to do so. Was it moral compromise or masterful diplomacy? Could neutrality ever truly exist in a world at war? What do you think? Was Sweden wise to bend without breaking, or did it sacrifice its principles to survive? Tell us in the comments below. If you found this story insightful, please like the video, subscribe, and ring the notification bell to support the channel. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.